Hello friends! Welcome to the Holly Lolly channel. Today we'll be discussing a rather intriguing topic that's sure to surprise you. We're going to talk about the strict rules and bans in Japan that don't exist in our countries, or at least, they're not as strict. You'll find out why it's so difficult for Japanese people to buy a car here, the challenges locals face when buying a bicycle, and why almost every foreigner ends up pulling their hair out when they start renting an apartment. Plus, you'll learn why you could end up in jail for 10 years over something as simple as alcohol. So, let's get started. You might wonder, where's the bathroom and kitchen? Well, to get there, you need to get dressed first. Watch, she goes out, walks around the building from the other side. Before a Japanese person can buy a car, they must prove they can use it without inconveniencing others. Look at the woman, she opens the door to go inside, almost knocking down the wall with it. Here's the living room and office, and on the second floor, look at this, she can only be in there while sitting, she's short. In Japan, salaries are high, and the cars are very good. It seems like many residents can buy any car they want, but it's not that simple. For example, most of us choose a car based on the amount we can afford. Say, you've got $10,000, $15,000, or $20,000, and you're ready to buy a car. You budget accordingly and choose a car within that range. That's logical, but not in Japan. In Japan, it works a little differently. You can't just save up money and buy the car you want. Before buying a car, a Japanese person has to prove they can use it without causing any inconvenience to others. One of the main requirements is having a parking space within a 2-kilometer radius of your home. Not only do you need a parking space, but its characteristics must meet certain standards. You must submit a drawing of your parking space to the police along with a request, specifying the make and model of the car you want to buy. The police will then verify that your parking space matches the car you intend to purchase, and only then will they grant you permission to buy the car. So, you need to know in advance which car you want to buy and submit a request for that specific car. Only after receiving approval can you go out and choose the specific make and model you're allowed to purchase. If, for example, you want to buy a large off-roader but your parking space is too small, even by half a centimeter, you won't be allowed to buy that car. You'll have to adjust your plans and choose a smaller car. In Japan, cars are chosen not based on personal preference but on the size of your parking space. If you buy a small parking spot, you'll have to choose a small car because the police will come to measure your parking space and make sure it fits. If it doesn't, even by a fraction, they won't allow you to buy the car, and you'll have to get a new permit. Or, if you change your mind and want a different model, you'll have to go back and get a new permit from the police for that specific car. Japanese people are completely fine with this because, in their culture, it's important to think about others' comfort. So, buying or renting a parking space before purchasing a car is considered the right and humane thing to do. But problems start even at this stage. Tokyo, for example, is a densely built city with almost no free space. Any open space that isn't used for buildings or roads immediately becomes a parking lot, even if it only fits 2 or 3 cars. If you visit someone and see an empty parking space under their house, I wouldn't advise using it because it likely belongs to someone, and the owner is just away on business. You might park there for a few hours, but you could end up with a huge fine. In Japan, it's definitely more convenient to live in your own house because, in that case, Japanese people make sure the house has at least 1 or 2 parking spaces. That way, even if guests come over, they'll have a place to park. Personally, I think people living in Tokyo don't even need to own a car because the public transportation system here is so convenient and comfortable. I just love the Japanese subway. I'm ready to ride it anywhere, fast, clean, comfortable. You know, a little ad from me. Actually, not everyone here owns a car, but I'd say nearly every second resident of Tokyo owns a bicycle. It's a very convenient, eco-friendly, and fast means of transportation, and it's free. I often see office workers, housewives, moms with kids, and elderly people who are also active cyclists. People say Amsterdam is the bicycle capital of the world, but Tokyo might be the second bicycle capital because people here love this mode of transportation. Women often use bicycles with baskets for groceries either in the front or the back, so they don't have to carry the bags. Moms often use bicycles to transport their children, and the seats are very comfortable and convenient. But what do you think you need to consider in Japan before buying a bicycle? That's right, a parking space. In Tokyo, for example, there are many parking spots for bicycles near high-rise buildings, in parks, and other public places. There are even multi-story bicycle parking lots, and many of them are, of course, Paid. If you leave your bicycle outside a designated parking area or haven't paid for the parking spot, it could be confiscated. To get it back, you'll have to pay a fine. Don't think you can just buy any bicycle and leave it outside your house. Sometimes, there are no free parking spaces, and you might have to find a parking spot 15 minutes away from your home. It's very inconvenient. You've got this great means of transportation to quickly move from point A to point B, but you always have to think about where and how to properly park and leave your bicycle so it doesn't get towed to a penalty lot or fined. I've often seen police officers checking license plates and issuing fines, leaving them for the bicycle owner to pay as soon as possible. Bicycles here are often sold with a lock, usually on the back wheel. You lock the rear wheel to the frame with it, and you can also lock the handlebar to the frame separately. You can even secure the seat by locking it to the frame. There are many types of locks you can buy. Why is that? Because in Japan, not only do they steal bicycles, but also individual parts of them, which is strange since everything here can be left unattended without fear of theft. It's incredibly safe. You can leave your phone or bag at a table in a cafe, go wash your hands, and know it'll still be there when you return. I've seen women leave their handbags with money on their bicycles while shopping, and nobody touches them. But, for some reason, bicycles and their parts still get stolen. It's a mystery to me. Share your thoughts in the comments. Why do you think this happens? All bicycles here have a registration number, like cars, and must be registered with the police. You might panic and wonder what I should do if I buy a bicycle in Japan. It's very simple. When you buy it, the store will ask for your passport details, name, address, and the seller will register your bicycle with the police on the same day. You'll receive a small card with the bicycle's details, which you must keep, and it's best to carry it with you in case of a check. Registration also helps find your bicycle if it gets stolen. When I was researching to prepare for this video and share information with you, I found a very interesting ban. In Japan, there's a ban on producing any type of alcohol at home. It's strange because the Japanese love to drink. They may not drink to the point where they can't stand up, but they often enjoy going to a bar after work to have a good time. Alcohol is sold everywhere in Japan, 24/7, but only to adults, so that to those over 21. Though there's no ID check at the checkout, it's all based on honesty. You confirm you're over 21 by pressing a button at the register. Of course, if a child of 10 or 12 years old who's obviously underage tries to buy alcohol, they won't sell it. But if someone who looks 19 or 20 tries, I wonder if they'd sell it or not. Both the US and Japan have strong beer cultures, but while homebrewing in the US is legal, making any kind of alcohol at home in Japan can get you 10 years in prison. Can you imagine? 10 years for making wine or moonshine at home, as many people did in post-Soviet countries, for example. Let's say moonshine has a very pungent odor, but even if it's just a bit of any homemade alcohol, it's illegal in Japan. You could face either 10 years in prison or a huge fine, up to 1 million yen. Can you imagine that? It's better not to brew anything here. This is all due to Japan's alcohol tax law. Producing any kind of alcohol at home without a license is strictly prohibited because the government won't collect taxes on what you make at home. You have to pay taxes on everything here, but the law doesn't apply to beverages with less than 1% alcohol content. Many foreigners planning to move to Japan or who have already arrived find the process of searching for and renting housing in Japan to be a serious source of frustration and a challenging headache due to the complex bureaucratic rental system. Many newcomers don't even realize how complicated it is and don't know where to start. The first thing to know is that foreigners may simply be denied a rental. Let's break down the reasons why you might be denied a rental in Japan. The easiest way for a foreigner to secure housing in Japan is through a language school. However, as far as I know, you would need to live in a student dormitory. If you want to rent housing on your own, it's not going to be easy. Before submitting an application for a long-term rental, you need to prepare all the necessary documents. In Japan, the term all documents is a bit vague. Why is that? Let me explain. We've been searching for a new place to live in Japan for about 2 months now because the apartment we're currently living in is incredibly cramped for 5 people. We literally can't fit in here. It's even difficult for me to set up a proper corner for filming. I wanted to at least spruce up my workspace with some posters, but I always have to film on the floor in a corner. It's the only place where I can fit because there is very, very little space here. So, we're looking for a long-term rental in Japan. You know, we've looked at a lot of listings, and we found a few options that seem suitable in terms of layout. It's very difficult to find a 4 or 5 room apartment, and let me remind you, there are 5 of us, so we're looking for an apartment with many rooms, and that's a big challenge. So, we found what we thought was the perfect apartment in Japan, and we asked our translator to call and arrange a viewing so that we could check it out, and then I thought we would start gathering the necessary rental documents. Our translator called the agency to inquire about viewing the apartment, but they didn't want to show it to us because they found out we were foreigners. The landlord immediately asked, if your people pass a Japanese language interview over the phone, if they answer all questions in Japanese and we have a dialogue, then I will allow you to come and view the apartment. So, we weren't even allowed to just come and see the apartment. Naturally, we won't pass a Japanese language interview. You know, I've been learning Japanese for 2 years now. I don't attend a language school. I take lessons with a tutor. I communicate with my tutor in Japanese, but when I go out into the real world, all my communication ends because I can formulate simple thoughts, simple sentences in Japanese. But when a Japanese person responds very quickly and not in textbook language, I don't understand it. I get lost. I catch only 1 or 2 words from the entire sentence, and I start guessing what they meant, and as a result, our conversation doesn't work out. So, of course, I understand that if I have to go through this interview, I won't be able to answer, or I'll answer completely incorrectly, not in the way the landlord wants. That's why we weren't even shown the apartment. We searched in another area and found another apartment where we could all fit, but again, we couldn't even view it. They told us, bring all your documents. I said, okay, what documents do I need? To give you an idea, I was communicating through a translator with the agency renting out this property. They replied, in Japan, they won't tell you what documents are needed. You know, I'm not entirely sure if everyone faces this situation. Let me clarify, I'm telling you about my specific case, sharing the facts of what happened to me, but that doesn't mean it will happen to you or your acquaintances in the same way, and you'll get the same responses. But in our case, we were denied at one place due to a lack of Japanese language skills, and at another place, another person didn't care whether we knew Japanese or not. They just said, bring all your documents, but they didn't specify what documents were needed. They just said, bring everything you have, everything you think is necessary. And after we bring the whole package of documents, they'll review it and either give us an immediate yes or no answer, or they'll say we're missing some documents and that we urgently need to provide something else. Only then will they give us a list of all the necessary documents. And only after we pass the verification that we are indeed solvent people, that all our documents are in order, will we be able to view the specific apartment we're interested in and plan to rent. Of course, during this time, someone else might rent it, and then we'd have to contact another agency and go through the whole process again. Honestly, I still can't believe we'll find a suitable apartment, but we've already called another place where, once again, they didn't tell us what documents were needed. They just said, bring everything you have. And for someone like me, who doesn't know the language well, this creates a lot of anxiety. I'm sharing everything from my personal perspective. You know, sometimes, as harsh as it may sound, you feel like you're not quite a complete person. Why do I feel so? Because you have ears, you have eyes, you perceive information, but you can't process it properly, again because of the language barrier. You pick up bits of information here and there, try to piece them together, and somehow survive in this Japanese world. But so far, my search for an apartment has been unsuccessful because I'm still gathering all the necessary documents. Moreover, I work remotely, so I can't provide a work certificate from a Japanese company, and I understand that I'll most likely be denied. However, later on, if everything works out, I'll tell you how I managed to rent an apartment here. People say that renting a 1-room or even a 2-room apartment isn't that difficult, but in our situation, it's more complicated because we have a large family and need many rooms. We all work remotely, hold conferences, video calls, and we simply need a room to work in, and separate rooms are needed for the children. I have children of different genders, so they need rooms, even small ones, to live comfortably, do their homework, and have space to play. Here's the minimum list of documents you'll definitely need to rent an apartment long-term in Japan: a resident card or a valid foreign passport. You'll also need a long-term visa that's valid for at least 2 years because apartments here are rented for 2, 3 years, or more. So, if you want to rent an apartment for 6 months or if your visa is only valid for 6 months, it's unlikely that you'll be able to rent a place. We recently got a new visa. Before renewing my visa, I contacted agencies and wanted to rent an apartment, but I was refused, and they explained that my visa was expiring in 3 months, so no one would rent a long-term apartment to me. First, extend your visa, make sure it's valid for the period for which you're signing the rental agreement. Usually, they offer to rent an apartment for 2 or 3 years. That's the minimum period for renting a place. Additionally, you'll need a letter from your employer or a certificate of enrollment in an educational institution. You'll also need proof of income, bank account statements, a Japanese phone number, and the most challenging part for me, guarantor documents. You need to have a guarantor in Japan, someone who can vouch for you, a Japanese person, or someone with Japanese citizenship or permanent residency, who can vouch for you. For example, why are landlords often hesitant to rent to foreigners? As we know, apartments here are rented with bare walls, so you have to buy all the furniture yourself, furnish the apartment, and the Japanese think that you might bring in furniture and then suddenly decide, that's it, I'm leaving. You'll pack up your personal belongings and leave. You might even damage the property and then stop paying rent according to the contract. In that case, the person who vouched for you has to pay the rent for the period during which you left and didn't pay. Since this person vouched for you, they're responsible for paying the rent. Additionally, this person has to deal with everything after you leave, removing the furniture, beds, refrigerators, sofas, wardrobes, everything you brought in. This person has to clean up after you. If you don't have such a person in Japan, like me, fortunately there are agencies that can act as your guarantor. However, you still need to pass a check for the agency to agree to be your guarantor. And honestly, I don't want to give you the wrong figure because a certain percentage of the rent will be kept by this agency as a fee for acting as your guarantor. So, if you don't have a guarantor or someone who can vouch for you in Japan, you should budget for this additional amount that you'll need to pay monthly to the agency acting as your guarantor. I got this document list from a friend who recently rented an apartment, and she managed to rent a place in Japan with this list of documents. The agency still hasn't given me any list. They just told me to bring whatever I have. So, I'm gathering my documents based on this list from my friend. Maybe, I don't know, this list might vary. Again, everyone's situation is different, so maybe someone else will have a different experience. But I'm gathering everything according to this list right now. And honestly, I often think about how easy it is to rent housing in our countries. You visit an apartment, if everything suits you, you pay a deposit, and the next day you can already sign the lease agreement. The apartment comes with furniture, and there are larger apartments available. Here, of course, it's much more complicated. So, if you're considering moving to Japan, be mentally and financially prepared for this. Usually, you'll need to pay 4 to 6 months rent up front. Although these amounts are significant, there are some advantages in Japan. For example, inflation in the country remains very low, and sometimes it's even absent. As a result, monthly rent increases very, very rarely, and sometimes it doesn't increase at all. This means that you could be paying the same rent for several years. No one will suddenly tell you that your rent will increase by 10%, 20%, or 30% starting next month. No, you sign a contract, and for the next 2 or 3 years, you pay the same amount. Additionally, many laws protect tenants' interests, which makes the eviction process more difficult. Many countries do not allow foreigners to own property. However, in Japan, it is easy for both foreigners and Japanese citizens to buy and own real estate. But for foreigners, getting a mortgage is not as easy. Japan has a program that allows you to get a mortgage for up to 35 years with a fixed interest rate. Imagine paying off a loan for 35 years with a very, very low fixed interest rate. If I'm not mistaken, this rate starts at 0.7% and goes up to about 1.5% per year, which is incredibly low. Our countries could only dream of such rates. So instead of paying rent to someone else every month, you essentially pay the bank for your loan. But the property you live in is already yours, meaning you're paying for yourself rather than just renting someone else's property. This, of course, is a significant advantage of Japan. Japanese financial institutions often require applicants to either be Japanese citizens or foreigners with permanent residency in Japan. The exam to obtain permanent residency or citizenship in Japan is quite difficult and, I would say, strict. First of all, you need to live in Japan for at least, I believe, 5 years or even 10 years to get permanent residency, if I'm not mistaken. Moreover, during all these years, you must not be subject to any societal criticism. For example, before this exam, they may ask your neighbors where you have lived in recent years for their opinion about you. And if any of the neighbors say something not entirely flattering about you, you could be denied permanent residency or citizenship. So, you must be as polite and courteous as possible to ensure that no one says anything bad about you. Because even if someone doesn't want to say something bad about you but says, "I'd rather not comment," or even says something bad about you, this neighbor did something wrong somewhere. These are direct grounds for denying someone a residence permit or citizenship. You need to have a stable income in Japan and demonstrate that you can earn enough to cover all necessary living expenses. The candidate is also expected to lead a stable life in the future, specifically in Japan, and pay all taxes and contributions, etc. There should be no payment delays. If you you've had any fines, they will also pay attention to that when reviewing your application. And since we've started talking about renting and buying property in Japan, I'd like to show you some rather unusual and surprising apartment options that can be rented in Tokyo. Due to the catastrophic lack of space in Tokyo, apartments are often made incredibly narrow, and even the houses themselves are so narrow that it feels like they've been squashed in Photoshop, stretched out to make the apartment or house long like that. But no, it's not Photoshop. These are real properties, very, very non-standard. For example, I was very surprised when I saw a 2-room apartment spread over 4 floors. At first I thought, how can a 2-room apartment be on 4 floors? For example, the kitchen is on the 1st floor, the shower and bathroom are on the 2nd, the bedroom is on the 3rd, and another bedroom is on the 4th. I follow one real estate channel that shows very, very unusual housing in Tokyo. Sometimes, it makes me laugh, sometimes it makes me cry, and sometimes it seems like my hair stands on end from the kinds of options they offer. And I decided to share and show you these unusual options. I would certainly show you them myself, but given what I've mentioned, I haven't been able to view any property without that list of documents. And as I apply for a larger apartment, I won't be able to visit and show you these small apartments, so I wanted to show you this channel so we could discuss it. Their content genuinely surprises me, even though I've been living here for 3 years, but such apartments evoke very mixed emotions in me. What do you think? Write and share your thoughts. And now, let's actually look at some of the strange apartments I found. So, what do we see? A tiny, little 6.5 square meter room. What does it have? There's an air conditioner, and that's pretty much it. I think only a futon would fit in there. I'm not sure if it would even be possible to place a bed. You might wonder, where is the bathroom and kitchen? Well, get ready, you'll need to get dressed. Look, she steps outside, goes around the building to the other side, and enters a tiny hallway to get to the kitchen. Here's the layout for you. The bedroom is in one place, and the kitchen is in another. Imagine you wake up at night and decide you need some tea or water. You'll have to get dressed if it's winter, run outside, circle around the building, and enter through another door where you'll find the bathroom, a tiny shower, and the small kitchen. When I first saw this arrangement, I was honestly shocked because how could someone come up with such an idea? What do you think? How comfortable and convenient would it be to live in such an apartment? Let me tell you where it's located. Well, it's 5 minutes from Shinjuku Station, which is one of the central stations in the city. The rent is 60,000 yen, which is approximately $429. So, it's a relatively cheap apartment, but of course, you'll also need to pay for utilities. The overall service fee is 5,000 yen as stated in the listing, which is another $36. So, in total, you'll be paying $465 per month for this tiny apartment. Its total area is 15 square meters. How do you feel about this option? I'm very curious to hear your opinion. Let me show you the layout once more. I was in shock, genuinely in shock, because imagine yourself in this situation, sleeping in one place while the bathroom and kitchen are in another. I think even in summer when it's warm, it would be extremely inconvenient to run outside and circle around the building just to use the bathroom. We're all human, we all have certain needs. You can see that the room is separated, and you have to go around just to reach that tiny kitchen. Take a look, there's hardly any space to even place a chair or table. The shower is small too. Well, maybe it's enough for one person, but this is clearly not a family-friendly apartment. Even 2 people might find it uncomfortable, and if we're talking about a family with a child, I can't even imagine how they'd manage. What basic things do you need for living? A table, at least 1 or 2 chairs, and maybe a microwave. Note that in Japanese apartments, it's very rare, I wouldn't say never, but rare, to have an oven. Usually, there's a stove with only 2 burners, but no oven. So, you'd need to buy one separately. And again, buying it is only part of the problem. My daughter often says, "Mom, bake a cake or some pastries," and I tell her, "Honey, we don't have an oven because there's no place to put one. We could buy one, but there's simply no room to install it." And in an apartment like that, there's definitely no place for an oven. I even don't see a washing machine there, and finding a spot to put it would also be a challenge. Sometimes you have the money to buy something, but no space in the apartment to put even basic things. I think that if you're a student coming to Japan, maybe it would be easier to live in a dormitory rather than running from room to room outside, circling around the building just to get to the bathroom, as if it were in another building. Let's look at the next options. Look at this narrow house. I filmed a review at a metro station called Kamiguro, and there was also a narrow house there. At first, I thought it was the same one. I really wanted to get inside and see it out of curiosity. Look at this thin, narrow house, and they show that there's a kitchen, a living room, and a study. There's also a second floor, but look at how low the ceiling is. The girl is sitting there, and she's Japanese, so she's short, but she can't even stand up straight because her head would almost touch the ceiling. Imagine how incredibly uncomfortable that would be. It's interesting to look at, to be amazed, and say, wow, unbelievable. But it's hard to imagine living in such conditions. Even though I'm not a large person, I'm constantly bumping into things and bruising my knees and legs. I keep hitting the bed despite my good coordination, but the tight space in the apartment keeps causing these minor injuries. Imagine how uncomfortable it would be here. Just look at the stairs. Imagine trying to climb them or coming down at night. You'd really have to think twice if you wanted to go to the bathroom at night. Or you might decide it's better to sleep downstairs rather than on the second floor. Let's look at the kitchen. I don't see a stove here. Oh, found it. There's a stove, a sink, but again, you haven't even placed a fridge or a washing machine, and there's already no room left. Even finding a spot for a wardrobe would be a challenge. But you need somewhere to store and hang your clothes, so you need a wardrobe. Imagine how cramped this apartment would be once you add all that furniture. It's already very, very small without any furniture. I, for example, love to read, and I suffer from not having any bookshelves here. In the end, you start storing books under the bed. But then you think about how sacrilegious it is to keep books under the bed. But in a rental apartment like this, you can't put anything on the wall without permission from the neighbors and the apartment owner, even to install a shelf. Even in this room, the bedroom, I can't install a latch on the door because Japanese apartments just don't allow it, let alone putting up shelves. What do you think of this little house? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. Let's look at the third property. You know, I could keep showing you these apartments like forever. I feel like on this channel, no matter what video you open, every new property could be discussed for a long time, and long videos could be recorded because each one is so surprising. I just picked 3 random videos to show you. Of course, I tried to show different types of properties. Let's get back to talking about this one. It's 15 minutes from Katsura Station. I'm not sure where that is, but it's definitely not central, so you'll probably need to transfer, meaning it's not very conveniently located. The first apartment was more convenient in terms of transportation. Next, the rent for this narrow, thin house is 50,000 yen, which is $357. The overall service fee is 8,000 yen, which is $57. So you'll end up paying $414 per month for a total area of 24.5 square meters. This is bigger than the first option we looked at, which was 15 square meters, and we're looking at similar price ranges. But here, you get a bit more space for the same money because it's farther from the center. But calling this a house is difficult. It's very, very narrow and thin. And knowing the characteristics of Japanese apartments, I realized that these houses are also very cold, drafty, and there's no heating, making it a perfect environment for mold and mildew. Let's look at the next option. You could call it a private house, and it's also quite narrow. There's a round window there. Let's look further. See how slim the Japanese woman is? She enters the house, opens the door to the bathroom, and practically knocks down the wall with the door. It's a bright, relatively pleasant apartment. We see a sink and 2 burners. Again, very, very little space. Look how slim she is, and she fits well. But if someone is a bit larger, they might bump their sides while moving around this apartment. Oh, another narrow hallway. Everyone in the comments wrote that only slim people can live in this house. And it's true. Look, here's the sleeping area, similar to what we've already seen. She shows that you can watch TV here, but it's practically hanging right in front of your eyes. And I'm not sure what she was trying to show. Maybe that you can eat or work here. Overall, it's a bright apartment or house, but also very narrow. Perhaps out of all the options, this is the most comfortable. But imagining yourself in these conditions still doesn't seem very convenient. But it's the first apartment where they've already placed a washing machine, which is an advantage. The hallway is narrow. Again, you can't put a wardrobe anywhere. So where would you put your clothes? I always wonder how Japanese people manage to look so sharp in their ironed shirts and suits when I think about where they keep their ironing boards and wardrobes to hang everything. Look, there isn't even a hook, not even at the entrance. I also have this dilemma in my apartment. Where do you hang your outerwear? There are no hooks to hang coats or jackets. You wouldn't want to throw them on the floor. It rains often here. You need to hang your raincoat so the water can drip off and let clothes dry. But there's nothing for that. So, I'll buy a wardrobe, but where can I put it in this narrow hallway? Or in the bedroom, where you can barely squeeze through to reach the bed? Where would you put a wardrobe there? Or in the kitchen, where this girl came in? Just look, the door opens and hits the wall. So, where exactly would you put a wardrobe? After all, everyone wears clothes. I also always have the dilemma of where to store things at home. If you're a girl, you might want, I don't know, at least a tiny dressing table so you can comb your hair, look in the mirror, put on some makeup, but that's just not an option in these little apartments. So, let's see about the location. Well, it's 4 minutes from Kamaido Suijin Station, with rent and fees totaling 99,000 yen, which is $707. For some reason, the total service fee isn't listed, so I can't give you that information. The total area of this house is 19 square meters. I'm very curious to hear your opinion about the housing options in Japan that I've shown you. What do you think overall? How do you feel about them? Write your impressions. What went through your mind when you saw these options? Which of the 3 surprised you the most? Share your thoughts in the comments. Also, please subscribe to my channel, give this video a like, it helps the video get promoted, so YouTube will show it in recommendations and similar videos so other people can watch too. Honestly, I'm putting in a lot of effort to create good content for you, preparing, researching interesting information to share with you, so I'll be very, very grateful for your support. Thank you so much. Big arigato to everyone for watching, and I'll see you in new videos. Bye bye!